Perfect.
Okay, we're going to get started again. So we're just going to finish up the teaching. And then we're going to do a little bit of work on and some discussion on emotional regulation. That sound okay? And then we'll be done, I think, around 2. Like, I think that's kind of the objective. So, okay, let's go to the next slide. So this slide is, her name's not, Maya Aguilera. How do you say her last name? Anyways, you have one wonderful woman. If you can't change it, change your attitude. So sometimes the situations we are in, we can't change. She's absolutely right. You can't change some situations. So your work situation, you want a job, you have to change your attitude. That means you have to deal with your emotions. And you have to really process them well in the off hours. If you have a difficult boss, and I mean, it would be lovely to say everyone would change for you, but that's unrealistic. Because that's not likely to happen. Other people usually aren't willing to change. Just a moment. But keeping other people accountable for their behavior is not a bad thing. That includes employers, co-workers, family members. Like, your perceptions of what happened may be different from someone else's perspective. Family. If we perceive events often very differently based on our filters, right? So what you need to go back to always is context. What's going on in the moment? What's happening? When it comes to employer situations, like this is work, and the expectation is you're going to work, not deal with emotions, right? That doesn't mean that you shouldn't. Most employers aren't there to. Your bosses are not usually interested in all that stuff. That doesn't mean you can't change your ability to address situations as they come up, right? Don't just push things under the rug as though it doesn't affect you. Because what you can help change is how you're treated by other people. If you feel like you're a doormat, chances are there's part of you, something deep inside, that has allowed other people to kind of walk on you. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Your own sense of inferiority, your own sense of being not good enough, all of those kind of things that create emotion. I think I was talking about this last time. It wasn't anything to do with a boss, but when I was at Liberty University and I was at a conference, did I talk about being at the American Association of Christian Counselors conference one year? And at that point, at that conference, Jonathan Falwell, who is Jerry Falwell's son, had announced that there was going to be a gathering of Liberty alumni. And I had graduated. I didn't have my Ph.D. then. I think it was just my master's. I was working on my Ph.D. And so this conference is just a fabulous conference. Like, there's about 8,000 people there. And he announced that Liberty alumni was going to have a breakout room, and so that we could all go and meet and greet, all that kind of stuff. And something happened so quickly in my soul and spirit. I haven't had this happen like this since, thank God. But I immediately wanted to run away. I wanted to run away. And so I said to my husband, I'm gonna go back to the room. And he looked at me and he said, what are you talking about? There's meet and greet for all Liberty alumni. Of course you're going to that. And I said, I'm not going to that. And my husband's like, what's wrong with you? Like, he didn't say any of that. He just said, of course you are. And I said, I don't belong there. What it triggered, I still don't really have a real good sense of what it triggered for me that day, except this deep sense of unworthiness and this sense that I just do not belong with these people. These people are smart. These people are so highly educated. Like, that's all of that was going on underneath. And so Bob and I are standing out in the hallway and having this discussion, because I'm going back to the room. I know what I'm doing. I am not going to go and sit there and be amongst all those people. The unworthiness, like we talked about earlier, this just deep-seated sense of unworthiness just came. And I want to say to you, when you have those kind of underlying issues from your family of origin particularly, man, they can just come, like that's like, I don't know how many years ago what that was, 12 years ago or so. It's not even all that long ago. But, yeah, maybe a little longer, maybe 15. But, I mean, my family of origin, that's been years, right? So it just hit in a moment. And it was a knee-jerk reaction. If I had been by myself, I would never have gone to that meeting. Never. And it would have been my loss. I mean, it was good to be there. It didn't feel good in the moment. Here we go with feelings. But my husband, being who he is like, what's wrong with you? Yes, we're going. And I'm like dragging my feet. And he just says, come on, let's go. And being Bob, has to go the extra mile, right? So I'm going to sit at the back of the room. It's all round tables. So I find a place where Bob wasn't happy where I was sitting. He wanted me to be up front. And I'm just sitting there thinking, yeah, I'm happy way back here, and I don't know anybody. It's a huge university, huge. So you don't know other people in other graduating classes. I'm happy there. What does Bob do? He gets up and he's going to go talk to Jonathan Falwell. Bless his heart. Yeah. So he goes to talk to Jonathan Falwell. He tells him, you really should meet my wife. She's in your Ph.D. program, and this and this. And then he brings him over to the table. I wanted to kill Bob. I'm sorry. It was like, when I get out of here, man, you are dead. It was like, I had for about 5 hours that day, and gosh, I'm even feeling it now, right now, this deep-seated sense of inferiority. It was so strong. And there are times where I believe the enemy just comes in and uses all of those. I wasn't thinking about how I've been treated as a child. I wasn't thinking about any of those things. I wasn't connecting anything with the emotion. I just wanted to be out there, and I just knew how I felt, which was like, I don't belong here. And that's what I kept saying to Bob, I don't belong here. I don't belong here. If they knew me, they would know I don't belong here. That's what's going on in my mind. What a lie. It was a lie from the enemy. But in the moment, in those few hours, I wasn't able to put anything in context. It was so overwhelming. And, I just think for all of us, we come to those situations in life where all of a sudden something is stirred and we really can't even begin to understand where it's stirred from. But sometimes it's from the enemy, wanting just to shut us down and to make it, I don't even truly have a total understanding of that whole situation yet, except that I know that it was like, oh okay, I was so glad to be out of that room. But then, in February of this year, this is so interesting how God grows us up, right? In February of this year, I was at a conference, and there are lots of people there. I see Jonathan Falwell walking down the hallway toward me with a friend of his, and immediately the Lord said to me, go talk to him about what's happening in the university. And I, without a thought, I went over to him and said, hello, Mr. Falwell. I called him Jonathan, I think. I'm so-and-so. And I said, there are some things happening that I really want you to be aware of within the counseling department. And I said, one of the counselors, he was on my dissertation board, my committee, my dissertation committee. He identifies himself by pronouns now. This is a problem in your university. And Jonathan looked at me because it was, I'm sure I caught him off guard, but it was like, I knew the Lord told me to go and do it. And he said, I'm going to look into that. And so I kind of left that. I saw him later, the next day or so, and I come up and I said, if I was abrupt, please forgive me. And he said, no, thank you, because I was not aware of that. And you know, I'm thinking, thank you, God, because I wasn't intimidated. I didn't have any of those other feelings. But I think sometimes, you know, if the enemy can shut us down in one place and keep us under his thumb, right, then he's going to do it. So thank God for people in our lives who take us by the arm and go drag us kicking and screaming sometimes, you know. But God is good, and I think we need to understand that we have perceptions and misperceptions about circumstances, and then there's this whole other spiritual thing that goes on. And so breaking it all apart is not always that easy. Yet, at the same time, we need to try to do that so that we have complete understanding. So I'm just sharing all that for somebody, I guess. But I think that God wants us to grow. We never stop growing. We never stop learning, right? And we never get to the point where we get it all together. So please be easy on yourselves in that sense. So if you, change our attitude. Go on to the next one, please, Louis. I love this slide. So the first slide, when we talked about your emotions tell you that you have a need, and this slide, your appropriate emotional response to any situation. So on the left is the appropriate emotional response. So the emotions say you have a need, this is how you should respond. So you perceive the circumstance, and then you have this ability to act in the moment. You perceive it, you feel it, and then you choose. Don't be deluded into the thought that you don't have a choice in how to respond to your emotions. Because quite honestly, the enemy wants to convince you that you can't control things. Now, you can't control all of life, you can't control what happens, but you do have the ability to choose how you respond to what happens in your life. Day-to-day kind of stuff. So you choose the ability to be who you are, yourself, your ability to surrender to God in that moment of pain, perhaps, and then the ability to act. So your emotions tell you you have a need, you perceive it, you feel it, and then you choose how to respond. What happens with dysfunctional responses is that we misperceive. Oh, I think I should have spread that out a little bit. So we misperceive a situation. Happens constantly. And if it doesn't happen with us, just watch the people around you. Mm-hmm. You say something, and they'll come back with something else, and you'll be going, oh, I don't understand where that came from. Mm-hmm. Well, the reality is that they misperceived. They didn't understand what you were saying or what you were doing. You have I believe we all have a responsibility at that point to clarify for people. If the response seems kind of out of character or doesn't fit what you were saying, you know, if we want good relationships, healthy relationships, we have a responsibility to just kind of go, I'm not sure you understood. This is what I was meaning. Did you understand that? Not saying that they don't understand anything, but I'm wondering if you
They don't have to accept it.
They don't have to accept it? No, we don't.
What I mean is, if I'm talking to you about my Catholic faith,
Right.
and I'm explaining it to you, you may understand it, but you don't have to accept it hook, line, and sinker.
That's right.
Right.
Exactly. But you as a person,
Right.
that doesn't mean that we diminish who you are
No.
or what you believe,
No.
right? So one of the things that I think is so important that happens when we misperceive someone's intentions, or we misperceive, and you never can actually know what another person's intentions are. So you have to be careful there, but we misperceive the circumstance, and then often we numb ourselves so we don't respond.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to be careful here, because there are situations where you should never respond,
Mm-hmm.
you know, that are so out there. Don't respond to some allegations or whatever. But when you misperceive a circumstance, there's often this numbing thing that happens. And then you end up abdicating responsibility, because you're not taking responsibility for how you feel in the moment or what's going on for you. So we want to be able to go back to context. What is happening in the moment? If you perceive something that a person has said and you challenge them, you know, or you say to them, I'm not sure I understand you quite, you know, and ask, you know, so that they can give them opportunity to share again, and you still don't, you think we're not on the same page here, you know, you can keep asking. You don't have to shut down. You don't have to shut down your emotions. You want to feel appropriate for the situation. And I hope I'm not going too much in circles here, but you don't want to abdicate responsibility within the relationship. You want to be able to act appropriately, always, whenever possible,
Mm-hmm.
right? Whenever possible. If someone attacks your character, you know, then sometimes you can have the ability to correct that. Sometimes you don't. So I'm not saying that you just jump in and correct everyone all the time. You have to have a relationship with people before you can do that. And so this is coming back to appropriate emotional responses, really, to people who you care about and that are in your circle of love and compassion. We don't have to worry about the broader world in that sense, because that's a whole other situation and a whole other circumstance. We just have to act appropriately ourselves. So if we misperceive, then we end up reacting out of fear, and we try to control other people rather than controlling ourselves. And we may say things like, you know, you make me feel so rotten, or we put it on the other person and we blame them for how we're feeling. But the reality is, we alone are responsible for those feelings. We alone. If we feel inferior, or then those are our feelings. The other person isn't feeling all that stuff. We're feeling it.
But Anne, what if they meant to make us feel the way you're saying? They're not responsible for saying something nasty and mean? Are they not responsible?
No, I didn't say that. They're not. Yeah, you can hold them accountable for being nasty and mean to you, but you can't hold them accountable for your feelings toward them. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Kind of, right? See,
It's hard though.
the way that you hold people as responsible isn't by emoting on them. It's not by, you know, pouring out your feelings upon them. It's about holding them to accountability and saying, what we were talking about earlier, when you do that to me, this is what I'm feeling. This really hurt, that really hurts when you say that to me. Hold them accountable. But you're not using your feelings to blame other people. You're not using your feelings to control someone else or to manipulate them. You're just stating the facts. That's a whole different ballgame, right? And if you have misperceived the situation, it also gives the person an opportunity to say to you, that isn't what I meant to do at all. I didn't mean to hurt you. I didn't mean this. And whether they're being honest with their own stuff, I don't know. Who knows? But I always try to take people at face value, right? And say, okay, so if they're apologizing, you receive it. And the same thing, the whole process of forgiving people, right? Somebody else,
Yeah, what if it's a person?
you're gonna have to speak a lot.
I'm sorry. What if it's a person that constantly trying to hurt you?
Constantly try and hurt
Yeah.
you, walk away, and I would say do not be in relationship with that person. We can only handle so much, folks, as human beings.
That might be easier said than done.
I know.
If it's family
And
members.
it's-
I hear you.
If it was a family member.
Is it that they are constantly trying to hurt you?
Yes.
They're consciously, you know that their purpose in life is to harm you. If that's their purpose in life, then you're dealing with a situation that really, I would say the reality is that number one, prayer is the one thing that can change other people's hearts. And I don't know that very many people, that their purpose in life is actually to harm another person, but sometimes their own emotional stuff gets in the way of them having good relationships, and that they have to put somebody down in order to feel good about themselves.
Yeah.
There are people like that, you know, that they have to put someone else down to feel good about themselves. It comes back to, it's still their problem if they're continually hurting you. But the sad thing is that hurt is residual and it stays in your heart unless you keep giving it over to the Lord. Living with someone is like that.
You can divorce your spouse, but you can't divorce your parents.
Or your children.
Yeah.
You're right, you're right. I think, you see, it's very complicated and families are very complicated. I think you have to look at this whole thing, and we don't know the purpose in other people's hearts. This is a huge issue. So if someone is purposefully, repeatedly hurting you, that's pretty, I mean, their heart has to be really, really hardened. If they are someone who loves you, if their purpose in life is to hurt you, that is so, I would say demonic. It's so evil, right? Evil purpose. So, as much as it would be good to walk away, some situations you can't. I hear what you're saying. Understanding that, is it really their purpose? I don't know.
They may do it without knowing they're doing it.
That's my assumption too, is that so many people do things and are so unaware of what they're doing to other people.
And they may be under another influence, like drugs or alcohol.
Oh, hey, there you go. If they're, using substances, yeah, they don't have a clue. When they come to their right mind, then they realize what they've been doing. So you've got a lot of complicating factors, but I still think that when if you can go back to addressing the context. So, same thing. When you do this, when you say that, this is how it makes me feel. And then walk away. You don't even have to engage in a conversation. Let them sit with it. Because what you're telling them is, when you do this, this is what it does to me. And then they have to deal with it, not you. You walk away and give it over to God. You know, keep giving it over to the Lord. You keep doing that, and there's going to be change. There's going to be change happen.
Don't you think too, a lot of these people that are like that, they're hurting immensely as well? There's something in their past that they're so wounded that they strike out against someone else. They're just so hurting.
Well, and that's right. They are very wounded people to do that. But that's not, we can't live life according to our woundedness. I mean, we can try, but all we do is leave a trail of woundedness behind us. So there comes a point in time when we get to take responsibility. And it doesn't matter, I mean, this sounds very callous, but it doesn't matter how much you've been hurt. Hear what I'm saying? Of course it matters to everyone and to God, and it matters to you. But ultimately in relationships and before God, our heart and our response should not be based out of our own woundedness, because it's never healthy. We get help for the woundedness, and then we learn to change our responses. Does that make sense?
It almost seems impossible, though.
Yeah, in very difficult situations. And there are certain situations, like I said, I mean, there are certain situations that if you can not be in that home, that it would be best. But you've got to know that is this person really purposefully trying to inflict pain on you? And the other piece of that is, if they are, then that's a dangerous situation for you to be in. Well, emotionally devastating. And so you really need to take that to the Lord to really, oh God, do I need to stay in this place? What is it?
I just wanted to mention that if the person continues to live in the past, then I can't engage because I've disengaged from the past.
Very good.
I'm healing, right? And so that, for me, brings me back, and I want to move forward. So when the past comes up, there's no response. Like, there's no, engaging. It's just like, delete, I'm sorry.
That is really excellent. Excellent.
Well, I had to go through a huge trauma to come to terms with this.
Yeah, to come to that place. So what was being said was that if the person is continuing to live in the past, engage in past things, the emotions of past, long past, I'm not talking about, but if they continue to do that, and you are moving forward in the future, in the present and in the future, yeah, you can't engage and go back and go back and go back. And so if they're bringing up stuff constantly, right, from the past, and trying to blame you for what happened to them or what their responses, most often their responses to what happened to them, and sometimes you had nothing to do with it, that you can't live there. So you have to make some decisions. And so number one is, when it's possible, try and deal with it. If the person will deal with the past stuff, that's good. If they refuse, then you have to do some really deep soul searching. And how much do I want to be engaged with this person? How can I be engaged in a healthy way that's not going to destroy me or destroy other relationships? So, I mean, those are hard things, hard decisions.
Well, doesn't the Bible say bad character corrupts good character?
A bad moral,
Bad company corrupts good
Yeah.
morals.
Oh, yeah, good morals, yeah, that's right, yeah. So be careful who you hang out with, but when it's your family, it's pretty hard. And if it's close family, you're married to this person, you know. But when it comes, I'm back to this perception of this is what the individual is willfully choosing to do to me because they want to hurt me. So sometimes we misunderstand that really they aren't willfully trying to harm you. They don't even understand why they're doing what they're doing. The result is the same. You cannot always be in a relationship with that person. That's the bottom line.
We get to a point, well, I got to a point, I think anybody working through this crap in their life, you get to the point, especially when you're in Christ, that we have to become responsible for our responses and our response in the relationship. What I mean is, like, I may even have triggers still, 40 some odd years later. I know I do, but what I'm saying is we may still, some people may not. So I'm saying we may still have triggers from the crap we dealt with growing up, preteen, teen, whatever the situation may be. But at some point, falling in love and trusting Jesus, I had to get to that point where I say, in whatever the relationship is, that, you know what, God, my ultimate goal is to please you
That's right.
and to be right with you. And if that means I can't have a relationship with somebody I would really like to have a relationship with, but it's not healthy, I have a responsibility to myself, but to the investment that God's made in my life at that point, and wants to continue to cause me to grow, to be more like Him, not more like just coping, if that makes sense.
That's right, because this isn't, believe it or not, it isn't just about making yourself better. We want to be better in the sense of being more emotionally understanding and of our whole self. But the ultimate goal is to become more like Jesus. It always is. It always is. And people around us often don't have the same goals. And maybe they're just so caught up in their own stuff, which is often the case. They're so caught up in their own stuff that they haven't dealt with and they're not willing to deal with. And there comes a point in time that, you know, you say, God, you know, I'm moving forward with you, no matter what's going on over here. Yeah, Paula, you were going to say something.
Yeah, what you were saying, in a situation where you have learned from, say, Christian values in your home when you were younger,
Right.
something that has been, I don't know, I'm going to say burnt into me, I'm going to say my situation is that this, I will never leave you nor forsake you.
That's
So
God.
in a marriage where you have a Christian and a non-believer,
Right.
how are you showing your non-believer spouse that you are truly a believer if you say, I'm done with you, I can't, you know, like, right? Like, that's tough for me, because I'm going, God's not going to leave him.
That's
He's
right.
not going to forsake him, even though he may not believe. He's still going to work with him and work, right? So
we have, I hear you.
right?
So let me answer this, well, as good as I can answer it, because I think, you know, every situation is unique, number one. But before God, it's God who says, I will never leave you nor forsake you. And, you know, he says that to his people, you know, and he loves us. He does love us. And we can hold on to those words in every situation. We can. If we're really strong emotionally ourselves. I think where it breaks down is when we are in, you know, if we're beaten down in a marriage or relationship, it's really hard to hold on to that for someone else. I don't know if I'm making sense. But that there are certain criterias where God releases us from marriage. Now, there's a difference here, and I'm not getting into theology here. I don't want to go down the wrong road here. I'll be getting my hands slapped. but there are biblical conditions for divorce. But you don't have to divorce someone not to live with them.
You can separate.
I mean, I'm not suggesting, these are very serious situations, right? And I remember, before I understood everything that was going on in my first marriage, someone said to me, I was very sick, I was getting really ill, I couldn't get myself better physically. And someone said to me, Anne, you are going to die in this marriage if you do not do something. And it woke me up. It woke me up. Because I was really physically very ill. And I couldn't figure out what it was. Like it was just, and what they saw wasn't just a physical, it was a spiritual and emotional. And there are times for us, some of us, you know, that we have to listen to that. And I mean, if we are accountable to ourselves and to God for our behavior, our emotions, our responses, then we have to take responsibility for our own wholeness, spirit, soul, and body.
Yeah.
You know, God can't make us well if we remain in a place where we're being persecuted. And I'll say that in a very strong way. And so there are situations where I believe that the Word of God is clear that you can leave. I think you can leave anyway. It's not about divorce. There's a difference. But I don't want to get into all of that. The biggest thing is that if you can take responsibility for your own emotions and for your own behavior, you're going to change the atmosphere in your home. And it's going to change things. Now, you can find that when you start changing, the sad thing about when you start changing, it's like an alcoholic getting clean or a drug addict getting clean. It's like they start changing and everybody else is used to who they were and they don't like the new person because they have to change. They have to change to accommodate the changes in the other person, and sometimes you get a lot of backlash. But if you can ride that wave, you're going to see progress. So I've been all over the place with all that. So anyways, let's move on. So perceiving and then feeling and then choosing is where you want to be. And if you go to the next one after that. Owning how you feel, that's always, okay, I think we're kind of getting to the end. Go to that one, Lenny. Yeah. So talked about being honest. So that's in those situations, even the ones where we feel like the other person is purposefully trying to hurt us. And I want to say this again, really, it's very, very few people that are really purposefully trying to harm someone they love. Very few people. For the rest of them, it's that they really don't get what they're doing to you, how it's hurting you, because you've never told them. You've probably never told them. And so that's on you in that sense. Be honest with your feelings. Be honest. Not judgmental, but honest. So you're not a wimp because you hurt. We all hurt. There's nothing wrong with you if you suffer. Suffering is common to mankind.
And it's
right?
not because you sinned either, necessarily.
That's right. That's right. You are in such a role today, Ellen. But it's true, what he's saying is absolutely right. It may not be, you're not suffering perhaps because you sin. Sometimes we cause our own suffering, but most of the time, that's not true. I mean, it depends. But yeah, then there's nothing wrong with you just because you suffer. It's a common thing for all of us. Primary feelings are there for a reason, so go back to those primary feelings and try and stay with them and pay attention to them. And begin to look at some of the scriptures that are associated with those feelings. Because then you'll begin to train yourself in what you need to be doing with those emotions, what you need to do with those feelings. We don't always like them, but we can work with them. We can do something about them. So remember, even if you think others disapprove of how you feel, that's, if you think they disapprove, whose issue is that?
It's theirs.
It's theirs. But you're feeling that they might disapprove of you. That's yours, right? Their disapproval is their stuff. Your feeling about it is yours. And it may just be a feeling. It may not even be based in reality. But validate your reactions. It's your reaction, not theirs. So, go on to the next one. Decreasing emotional suffering. Okay, I don't know what happened to the other picture there, but that's a nice empty space.
Want me to draw something there for you?
I'm not sure. So releasing painful emotions by increasing awareness of them. So we talked about this, but I can't say it enough. You have to begin being aware of the emotions you have. Don't resist them and don't repress them. Because all you do by resisting them is, it's like you're putting up this big wall. I'm not going to have that emotion. How well does that work for you? It's almost like it increases it, right? And then when you repress it, you push it down, it's like a pressure cooker. Up it comes. And it will come up. Usually not in the best places, you know? So then go to managing painful emotions. So we've talked about this, but we're going to keep talking. I'm going to say the same thing over and over. Notice it. Notice it. Name it. What am I feeling in this moment? What am I feeling in this moment? As much as you can. There's going to be times, like I go back to that thing with Liberty University stuff. And I didn't know. All I knew was how awful I felt and that I felt totally unworthy. I knew that much. But, so I could name that a little bit, but it was just an overwhelming sense that happened. Accept the emotion. Okay, this is how I feel. Oh well, that wasn't very nice. I didn't like that. But accept it. Accept it. Sometimes you need to create some space from the other individuals or the situation. You need to take a little time away. Say, wait, I just need a little bit of space to think about what you said. Anything wrong with that? Sometimes there's family situations where you ask for space and the person will follow you everywhere. That's really actually quite dangerous. Because they're not respecting any boundaries that you have. Ask for space, expect it. And sometimes if they won't leave you to have some space to process what's going on, you have to look for creative ways of doing that. You need to do that for yourself. That's hard sometimes. And if you're a person that wants to, I want to get this dealt with, and you want to chase the person, and I'm saying that figuratively, room to room, but we need to discuss it right now. We have to talk about it right now. What's going on for you? Yeah, you're feeling pressured for what? somehow you feel that this has to be dealt with in the moment. That's your issue again. So then I'm talking about, you know, both sides of the coin on this one, because there's something driving people. And so a situation where, let me just give you a situation where perhaps, and I think this happens more for men than women, but maybe not necessarily. Sometimes there's been a big kerfuffle, you know, an argument, and a man, or one, maybe the man or the woman, but I'll pick on the men for a minute, want to leave. Like, I have to go, I'm going for a drive, I need to get my head on straight, and the wife will literally grab hold of him, will try and pull him back physically, or try and do something. That creates a real sense within both of them, there's some real issues there, right?
Yeah.
What's she afraid of?
Of him talking to somebody else.
Could be that he'll talk to somebody else. What did you say?
Abandonment, he won't come back.
Abandonment, yeah. So that's, whose issue is that?
That's hers.
That's her issue. But she's not dealing with it very well. So you get these patterns in relationships that happen. And you don't have to have a big event like that to have chasing. You know, if someone won't give you space, you still need to be able to ask for it and keep them accountable. I need this space. I need to take some time to think about what you just said, or I am really upset, I am really hurting, or I'm really angry, or I'm really sad. Name your feelings, and I'm just gonna go and work through some of that stuff. It's okay to ask for that. You need to ask for those things. And then be mindful of the emotion. I want you to stay with the emotion for a little bit. Don't, that's further on. Mindfulness is still just accepting and being aware of it. Increase your ability to tolerate emotion. Sometimes there's a lot of people who've been from difficult situations will do everything they can to run from any emotion. And I encourage you not to do that. Stay with the emotion for a short period of time, right? So that you're able to tolerate it. And then redirect, and then redirect. Some people need to increase their level of tolerating emotion. They're so afraid of their emotion. And I think sometimes this happens with men who are afraid of anger, right? What if they get angry, really angry? What will they do? So they pretend or bury anger so deeply that they won't feel it. But it's still there. It's still there. And then it comes out in a huge explosion, or perhaps physical alterations, right? Altercations. Mm-hmm. So that's why it's important to be able to tolerate the present emotion, and then to stay with that and begin to deal with it. So in all the ways we've talked. Let's talk about triggering. So triggering, I've got these all mixed up. Let me talk about triggering. It's not up there. That's what I realized. That's the other slide that isn't up there. Sometimes we're set off, right? Triggering is when you're set off by someone else's words or emotions, or even an event, or sometimes even a thought that you have. You can be triggered by a thought that you have, right? And just, we were talking earlier about an anniversary date, you know, and all of a sudden you have all this grief coming up, and you're thinking about that. Those are triggering. So it's past grief, but it feels very real in the moment. And it's okay, you just need to acknowledge it and to allow yourself to feel the feelings, and then remind yourself that this isn't happening again. And in some situations, you just need to take the time, you know, to grieve again, you know, whatever that looks like. So whether I often used to tell people to write letters to their loved ones when grief was overpowering and very, It was like so much sorrow, so much sadness, and they just could not get over it. And but that's healthy anyways, to write letters. You don't mail them, you know, but just to get that out and to go to the cemetery and just talk. Now, some of you may find that very strange, but you know what? We talk to Jesus all the time. And I kind of think, sometimes we need to get stuff out. I did that with my dad. Actually, I was part of a great healing with my dad. I just went up to the cemetery and I just sat at the tombstone and I talked to him. I wish I could have talked to him when he was still alive. But I needed to get some stuff out. Lots of it. And God had been working on my heart with it. And where else could I go? You can talk about it to someone else perhaps, but they really don't get it. But I needed to kind of yell a little bit too. It's very quiet in the cemetery.
No one just be quiet.
And no one was talking back to me. But it was very, that was a turning point for me with my dad. And I already resolved some things while he was still living, but there was so much that we never talked about. And, some of you may think, well, that's really weird. Well, okay, I'm weird. It was very helpful. And I think, like, the anger just left. It left. And, I just prayed and asked the Lord just to take it all away, because I didn't want to keep it any longer. So there's lots of things when we're triggered that we can do with our emotions. But one thing we want to do is reduce those emotions that get triggered as much as we can. It lessens over time. When there's someone that has died and we're grieving their loss, there's just a natural process of grief that we all go through, and we can't deny it. One of the things that used to happen in the church and in the church realms was that there was this sense that, it was even spoken, oh, you'll get over this, and kind of flippant, behavior that we used to do. Well, the reality is our human, the way God created us and our emotions, there's a process of grieving. And whether it's someone who's died, or you've gone through a divorce, or you're grieving a loss of a relationship that can't be restored, or that you see no hope in restoring at this point, grief is still grief. You have to go through it. You can't. If you avoid it, you just put it off. And that comes up in all kinds of different ways, unhealthy ways. So to be able to grieve well, and to do that, that's a whole other teaching, grieving well. But emotional surge, that's up there, is the outcome of our heart beliefs that are triggered. What we believe about situations in life, what I believed about my dad even. Part of me loved him, part of me hated him. Mm-hmm. But the part that hated him was based on truth, but also, the context wasn't always there either as a child. So we have our heart beliefs, and our heart beliefs need to line up with truth. What does God say about this situation? Knee-jerk reactions, the triggering that happens causes a lot of knee-jerk reactions that usually get poured out on other people. But that triggering is meant to alert us that we need a bigger perspective. And how do we get that? Well, usually by going back and looking at the situation. Marilyn?
One quick thought, I think a lot of times, especially as Christians, we can be flippant in saying we need to just get over it. But we don't. We need to change our minds so that we work our way through it.
That's
There's
right.
a huge difference between getting over something and working through something. And I think if we would engage our minds and our hearts into, Lord, help me to get through this,
Yes,
it opens us up, for one thing, to be more open to receive different helps, different whatever, but it releases that expectation from ourselves that I have to be better by tomorrow.
yeah, and that's a huge thing we put on ourselves. Oh my goodness, yes, yes. And there's this thing that it's almost like a cultural thing that
Yes,
that if you're not better by such and such a date,
right? Yeah.
there's something wrong with
Where
you.
did that come from? Yeah.
Now, so I want to go both sides of this again, because if 10 years after a fact you're still at the same place of grieving that you were 6 months after someone died or something, then you know that you haven't processed well. I think we have to be, what's the reality? What happens for most people? I don't know how we got on death, but with deep grief over the loss of someone you love, 3 years. 3 years. First year is the most painful experience of your life, right? It's just so painful as a rule. Second year dissipates a little, but it basically 3 years, especially if someone's lost a spouse or a child.
But
3
grief isn't always death either.
No, it's not always death.
Yeah,
No.
like, there's so many situations when
Yeah.
it comes to trauma that cause us grief.
Yeah.
That is not, it's not death, but in some ways it's a death to a piece of us.
That's right. And in the midst of that, see, we're owning our own emotions. We're not pushing it off on somebody else. We're not saying that this, we're not saying the emotion itself is bad. We're just owning it.
Right.
I'm sad. Here's why I'm sad. Now, God doesn't want us to stay in that place, so we want to we're not going to be sad all the time, but we're going to have moments of sadness and sorrow. And that's part of living life, I think. We just, to understand all of that and to be able just to emote, let that emotion come. It's okay in the moment. And then,
Everything in that we've talked about here, like Yvonne and I have talked about this several times, and the word there is time. Time in all of this. Time. Right? Time's a big deal in all this.
timing is a big deal
Yeah.
too.
Right.
So there's time, well, look at Lamentations, time to grieve, time to mourn, like
Yeah.
God's timing in all of those things.
There's a time and a purpose for everything, right?
That's right. And that we get ahead of God sometimes, we lag behind sometimes. But I really like what you said, Marilyn, that we're moving forward in this. We're not stuck. This is the key with all of these things, with grieving and relationship. We're not stuck in this grief and this mourning and this sorrow every day, all day long. You know? I mean, initially, that's the way it is, right? Your body, your mind, your heart, everything's responding to something, especially if it's been sudden. Then, you know, there's this place of pushing through all that, but you keep pushing through in every circumstance of life.
I have another thing, Ann, that I think of, like when you were just speaking there, that instantly came into my mind that I hold dear for me, is that I have seen myself wading through the muck and the mire to my eyeballs, but pushing on, pushing through, and coming out the other end clean.
Yeah, that's such a good analogy. Yeah, I don't know about you. How many of you feel like you've been through quicksand?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and some of us have been, you know, walking through the quicksand feeling like we're dragged under for a long, long time. God doesn't want us to stay in that place. Sometimes we have to go through it, right? We go through it and we see the other side, and that's our goal. We're going to the other side. And you know, that we don't give up hope. And that's where having others come alongside us. But people can't come alongside if they don't know what's going on. That doesn't mean you tell everybody what's going on, but that you have some friends that you talk to, that we are accountable to one another, and that we can listen and hear what's going on. And then, you know, because sometimes we need help to get through the quicksand. We get stuck in our emotions. We get stuck in our grief. We get stuck in our anger, you know. The key is lift that foot. And sometimes you need somebody to throw you a rope. I'm thinking of the donkey. I'm seeing the picture of that. I don't know where I saw this one time, a donkey in quicksand. And, you know, going under and, you know, throwing the rope and somebody trying to get out and get it. You know, sometimes we're that desperate, we just need to, we have to grab onto a rope. So, and I think each of us knows where we are in our own lives, whether that describes us now or that's past, or we're stepping into the quicksand sometimes, right? We're going from one situation to another, but God knows. And He really wants to heal those emotions. Our emotions motivate our behavior, and behavior is a result of choice. So don't forget these truths, because it's all about accepting responsibility for our emotions. Okay, so what are you telling yourself? This is how you regulate. What are you telling yourself? How do we get from, we didn't do number 1. Can you go back one slide? Do I have these all out of order? There we are, that's better. Oh, it's your fault this time. Woo! For change. Strategies that can help you regulate. Okay, identify and reduce the triggers. Okay, so we talked about that. Don't try to avoid negative emotions or be afraid of them. Look for patterns or factors that are present when you start to feel strong emotions. So underline that. You want to look for patterns that are present. So any factor when you start feeling a strong emotion, because they often spring up very quickly. So if you know the pattern, so those feelings of unworthiness, I can't do it right, you know, feelings that create sadness and sorrow, those kind of things. You look for the strong emotions, and then you want to explore them a little to see how much weight they carry. And I think it's really helpful if you're able to give on the Likert scale 1 to 10, 10 being extreme, start to quantify your emotion. How strong is this emotion? And you know, it might be helpful just to write these, get a notepad, get a even better than a notepad, as a book, a notebook, so that you can keep track and just put down, this is what I'm feeling, this is how strong it is, this is an 8 today, you know, and this is a certain situation. Those kind of things are going to start to help you really process, because you're going to look at the context, you're going to decide how strong that emotion is, and you might be surprised. You know, a week later it's only a 2. That's huge progress. It's okay. It doesn't have to go right away. Give yourself time. So, you need to tune into the physical symptoms that create emotions. We talked about that. If you want to go to the next one, look at what are you telling yourself. So that probably was one of my biggest issues. What do I tell myself? About the circumstance, but about the emotion. So if you're feeling rejected, after you haven't heard from a family member, sometimes you believe that's because they don't care about you any longer. In my family, if I believed that about my mom, because I think maybe, I don't know how many times, I could count on one time. No, maybe I said both hands, the number of times she's ever phoned me. So if I believed in my heart that she didn't love me, that she loved me only according to the number of times she called me, that would be a huge error on my belief system. Now, the way she behaves sometimes makes me think that, right? If I allow myself to go there. But I have to choose. And that's the thing about choosing what you do with your emotions. Because I chose 3 decades ago, that I was gonna love my mom, no matter how she loved me or didn't love me. And I would say it took 20 years before she hugged me. Yeah, and I don't know, around that time, maybe a couple of years later, before she could say, I love you. She couldn't, she never said that. But the context, I'll go back and look at my mom. And sometimes, I'm not saying it didn't hurt terribly. But I had a choice of what I did with that emotion. I could blame her, but she didn't have the capacity to show love. She didn't have the capacity. Isn't that sad? Because she didn't know what to do with it. She still doesn't know what to do with that emotion. It's really hard.
Sometimes it can be a family thing, as far as showing emotion. Like in our type of my family background, you never showed emotion. You never hugged. You never said I love you or anything like that. It's just an underwritten thing of it's there, that I love you and stuff like that. But some families, they just don't do that.
Well.
And then she married into my family. We made up for it.
That was a shock.
She couldn't handle it.
So, very interesting about this. Very interesting.
We're Dutch. We kiss also.
Both sides of the cheeks.
It's so interesting when you say that, because somewhere along the line, somebody's been so deeply wounded that they didn't feel safe to express love and compassion within the family. And it creates this is where generational iniquity comes in. And we have this whole thing, and I'm not picking on you, this is the same thing in my family too. My mom's history was, she didn't have a mom and dad. Her mom ended up, when she was 5, her mom was taken to a psychiatric ward, and she was raised by her grandmother. And there's, the things that happen in life. And so, you're right. I think her grandmother did express love to her. She was close with her grandma, but her grandma died when she was 16, so she knew a lot of loss. Even that, though, there's things in families that we hope could change, and it hasn't overall. But then she married, right? And someone also that didn't know how to express love appropriately. And so you get this whole thing going on. And then, we get to be adults and we get to choose how we express. But when I married Bob, it was the same kind of thing, Gladys. It was like, oh my goodness, this family hugs, they kiss, they just won't leave you alone. I'm like, oh my goodness. And not only that, I was an only child. So it's like, oh, I'm overwhelmed, right? It's that kind of sense that, but it felt good. It felt good. So you learn as you go along, right? So yeah, strategies, I don't know how we get on these tangents, but anyways, we make a choice on how we respond. And that's what I was saying. We can still choose. We can still choose to love those who can't show love or affection to us. We can. Even if they are like porcupines. Now that means we may have to take time for ourselves, much time for ourselves, to take care of ourselves. Because that's a really difficult situation. And we just might have to take time away. But we can choose how we respond to others. And I think that's so important. Okay, caring for yourself. Decreasing high emotional arousal. So, how do you kind of take that deep breath? Okay, stress reduction. Yeah, go fishing.
Yeah.
Some people we know go fishing regularly.
Breathe in and breathe out.
Or hunting.
But, okay, so deep breathing, and there's breathing exercises you can get. Those are really helpful. And then, yeah. Yeah. And we, as
Make sure your breath's not stinky though.
what was that?
Your breath is not stinky if people are around you.
I still didn't.
Make sure your breath isn't stinky if people
Oh,
are around.
sorry, yeah. Yeah, no, don't breathe on people. Breathe in. But there's really good relaxation exercises. I haven't done these for a long time, but I did for quite a while. I did these regularly. From the tip of your toes to the top of your head, stress reduction, like tightening your toes, tightening your muscles all the way up your body. Tighten, release, tighten, release, tighten, release. Even up to your eyebrows. That sounds really strange. Lay in bed and do this. You don't think of anything else except tighten and release. But you know what? It's a way of focusing your mind on your body and releasing the tension and stress. It's helpful. How many do massages? Some people get massages as a part of their work, like their compensation or whatever. I wish. But therapeutic massage. Oh my goodness, how good that is for you, just to release tension in your muscles. Inspirational music. In my household, we do things repetitively. I bet you it was 10 years we listened to the same CD every single night before we went to sleep. Thank you, Bob. The Lord is a Strong Tower. That was the name of the CD. Every single night. I'm like, yeah, we gotta go to sleep to this. But you know what? Inspirational music, meditative music, peaceful sounds like water, and those kind of sounds. Those are really, really good. Yes?
Emotional freedom technique, I find it really helpful. The tapping.
Do you?
If you know anything about that. Yeah,
Some people do.
Super tapping.
I haven't really done that. I mean, I haven't been trained in it and I don't do it, but there's all kinds of different kinds of things that are going to help reduce stress. Scripture reading, the Word of God. I mean, talk about taking us out of our own situations. It depends on where you read in the Word of God. Sometimes that can make you more stressful. But scripture reading, exercise, huge. Like go for a walk. I'm my own worst enemy. I want to keep doing what I'm doing until it's finished. I want to complete something. And to my own demise, because by 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I haven't taken a break all day. Like, hello. And I'm feeling a little tense, and why? Because I haven't taken a break all afternoon. Hello. Just go do something different. So exercise is good. Pay attention to when you're getting angry, too tired or frustrated. It's back to paying attention to your emotions. So that's the calm practices. And then relaxation and rest. So what really winds you up? Some people, like, I do not advise you watch the 10 o'clock news. I used to religiously watch the news every night. For 4 years, probably watched the news every night. Anyways, I no longer do that. Because if there's anything that will wind me up is watching mainstream media and going, ugh. So I don't do that. But, getting yourself, and I think as you get older, you kind of recognize this more. Like if I, even if it's a TV program or something on YouTube or something, and I start watching it at 9 o'clock at night. That's really not smart for me to do anymore. Because I go to lay down and go to sleep, and it's like, I can't sleep. What's wrong? Well, because my brain is still going. Even though I'm not really thinking of anything, it's still there. So watch what winds you up and avoid it, because you need your sleep. Rest is paramount to emotional regulation.
That's why I don't drink coffee
Go
after
ahead
8
to
o'clock
the
at night.
next one.
They say that if you do your deep breathing exercises just before you go to sleep, it helps you go to sleep.
Yes, and the muscle relaxation is really good too. Deep breathing, muscle relaxation, and I would say meditative music too. Like that's really
Physical
helpful.
labor helps you sleep real good.
What was that?
Physical labor helps you sleep real good.
The pain that you get from doing it though, isn't it?
Physical labor, yeah. Well, you know what? And it's a problem that we have in our culture because we're not physically as, you know, we just do not do the physical kind of labor. I don't anymore compared to what I used to, and I don't sleep as well. Well, guess what?
That's true.
I'm not doing as much. I'm not physically spent. I'm mentally spent, but then I can't sleep. Go ahead.
There's something about petting a dog. You can't be angry and uptight and stressed and pet a dog. Like I can't pet Molly and be mad. Whether something's irritated me just before, like whatever. There's just something. That's why they're service animals, right? Like for a reason.
That's why you get
So Marilyn, I'm going to invite you over to pet my two
I'll
Rotties.
bring Molly. I can Molly. I'm on my lap and yeah.
But it's true, honestly. I just did a newsletter and I put pictures of these two Roddy pups and Roddy Rowdies. I mean, they've been so good for us this winter. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not keen on training two pups at the same time,
Yeah.
thanks to my son, but you're right. And pets are very therapeutic, you know, just being able to, you know. And I just recently found out the one pup has now taken to sleeping with Matthew, so good for him. It's on his bed. Because when it's full grown, it will take the whole bed. Oh dear. But pets are really, yeah. And that's why horse therapy, riding therapy is so good for people. You know, it's such a therapeutic technique because animals reflect some of your emotion, right? Animals and dogs, but horses really do. Like they know, they pick up, and yeah, therapeutic riding, all of those kind of things are so helpful. So, somebody say something. Somebody want to ask a question? Oh, I thought. Keep looking for the positive emotions. Contentment. When you're feeling content, notice it. Yesterday afternoon, I stopped work at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, which is not typical for me. And I just stopped. And I just went and sat on the couch and read for a little while, and I just thought, oh, do I ever feel so much better? I just needed to stop. But I was content, and I recognized it, you know. And gratitude, being grateful.
Yeah.
An attitude of gratitude, right? They're grateful for the things you have, but most of all, the relationships you have. Think about your family, think about, and try to think positively about them. You know, of noticing the positive experiences because you want to increase resilience. So keep doing that, seek out help and accountability. And then, to the next one. Just a reminder, what is your responsibility, what is not your responsibility. So it's not my responsibility for other people's ideas. Imagine that. Other people can have ideas. I often disagree with other people's ideas, but no. It's their ideas are their ideas. Other people's opinions are not my responsibility. Other people's actions aren't my responsibility. The consequences of other people's actions is not your responsibility.
Yeah.
So think about your children. you know, when they were younger. Don't children love to put all the responsibility back on you as a parent? Mom, I need this. I can't find this. Can't find that. I'm talking about, you know, a little bit older than 2 or 3. You know,
Teenagers.
making like teenagers. You know, they love to make it, put it back on you. Like somehow this is now your responsibility. Well, no, whose clothes are those? You know. So here's something I did one time. I was getting a little annoyed because the girls' room was just like, you know, crazy. Anyway, so clothes left all over, and we had one little bathroom and stuff left all over. And so I just did the warning thing, you know. If you do not pick up after yourself, after you've used the bathroom, and put your stuff away, you know, in the bedroom, like keep it tidy, I'm gonna take care of it for you. Oh, Mom. No, I'm gonna get a box and put it away. Oh, Mom. So I got a box. It was a tall box. Because it had to be big enough for clothes, a week's clothes. And because what I said was, I'll keep it for you, I'll take care of it for you, and I'll keep it for a week. They didn't believe me. I don't understand that at all. You know, probably because I've been threatening, you know, for
In your whole lives.
saying if you don't pick up this stuff, so, you know, then, yeah. So that kind of changed the atmosphere in our home a little bit, because then their stuff, I just kept putting it in the box when I find it in the bathroom or whatever, stuff they didn't put away, and then they would go looking for it. Mom, where's this? Probably in the box. Well, that's no good, I need it. You should have thought of that, you know? And I mean, little things, maybe I was being harsh, but you know, there's things we need to teach. And it's not, if people can't pick up after themselves at home, if children don't learn to do that, they're gonna carry that with them to the next, you know, when they get married, when they get whatever. Oh, mother and daughter thing going on here. But you want to train up the children. You know, you want to do it nicely. Sometimes you have to be creative. But don't let them put it back on you, little things. And as adults then, in relationship, don't let your spouse put things on you that are not yours. Talking about, you know, attitudes and all kinds of things. If you haven't done something, it's not your responsibility to pick up after somebody else, unless you have an unwritten agreement in your house that you are the gopher. And that's okay. And we're do things out of love.
Some parents do that. They'll tell their children to pick up after themselves, and when they don't do it, oh, I told you, and then they'll go do it.
Yeah.
So what's that teaching the child?
Not to be accountable. Yeah. We all want to, if we want good, healthy relationships, we want to be accountable for what we do. Anyways, let's go on. So we're not accountable for the consequences of other people's actions, or other people's beliefs, or other people's mistakes, or other people's words. Those are the things you cannot be responsible for. But your responsibility are your words, your behavior, your actions, your efforts, your mistakes, your ideas, and the consequences of your actions.
So my.
Yeah, my. If you take responsibility for the things that are yours, and you're honest about those things, you'll see other people stepping up and taking responsibility for the things that are theirs. All right. What do we have left? Not much. Emotional well-being, the ability to produce positive emotions, moods, thoughts, and feelings. So there are times when you are all very well in your emotions.
Feeling overwhelmed.
Sure.
Hopefully more, sometimes, more often than not. But that's really what it is. Emotional well-being is being able to produce positive emotions. And sometimes that means even when the situations aren't very pleasant. And adapt when you're confronted with adversity and stressful situations. How quickly and well do you adapt to those situations? The quicker you adapt, the more emotionally regulated you are. One of the foundations is resilience, which allows you to navigate challenging life events. It allows you to be flexible, adaptable, and teachable. So, resilience is that ability to bounce back in very difficult situations, negative situations. The more you do it, the better you become at it. And so it's like a muscle. So the more you take personal responsibility and personal accountability for your emotions, your reactions, and your behaviors, the more resilient you become. And the more resilient you become, the more you are able to face difficult situations in a really godly manner without overreacting, without exploding, without, melting down. Those are the kind of things that we want to be able to grow in all the time. So it impacts how you face challenges and how you think about challenges that you face. How do you think about the challenges that you face? Do you feel like everyone's out to get you? Well, that's not really a good feeling, and it's not true. So, how do we feel about the challenges? If we can feel positive in the face of challenges, then we are emotionally regulating very well. Because it's like putting the tea bag in boiling water, right? You want to see what it's made of? Just put it in the boiling water. That's like us. So what are we made of? Are we dealing well emotionally with situations? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Well, we're still heading forward. We're pushing forward. We're pushing through the quicksand of our emotions, and we're going to come out the other side in good form, dealing with them adequately and really holistically so that everyone's healthy in our families and in our relationships. Well, let's change gears. Let's take a look at the homework that you have, and we're going to go through that a little bit. I'm going to shut the camera off.
Homework?